on the email chain. Do you have the Zoom link?
It's coming up right now. It's
Okay.
just the wicked cartwheel of death.
On that note, I believe we are live. Is that correct?
Yes, we are now live. Sorry about that. Yes, we are.
No problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. This is City Lake Worth Beach Electric Utility Advisory Board meeting, Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. Can we start with the roll call, please?
Yes. Ramsey Stevens, not here for the roll call. Theodore Bios, I hope I'm saying that right.
Belois, but that's close enough.
Belois, thank you. David Sims, not here for the roll call. Matt Portilla.
Present.
Brian O'Blander.
Here.
And Eric Jeffers.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we can move forward with the Pledge of Allegiance. If anyone has a flag in front of their desk, just face that direction, or you can face City Hall. I was going to ask Theodore if he wanted to do the pledge, but he just dropped off. So, Mr. Jeffers, you are next in line, if you would be so kind.
Sure, I'll do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. All right, thank you. Oh, and he's back. Okay, are there any additions, deletions, or reordering for the agenda today?
No, there are no reordering.
Okay, and any presentations?
No, just
Oh,
the unfin, just a new business.
okay.
And the business.
Is there anyone in the gallery with their hand up or any public participation comments from online?
Let me just double check. I don't see anything on the webinar here. And as far as public comments that come through my email, nope, nothing there either. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Approval of minutes. If everyone had a chance to review the minutes from back in June, it's about 5 months ago. Just need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, moving on to unfinished business, item A, solar energy subscription. Okay, Mr. Liberty, can you catch us up, like rewind back from 5 months ago in the Reader's Digest version of what we were discussing for anyone who may be listening online?
See Ed on the call. I don't see him in the meeting. Just bear with me a moment. Let me try to get a hold of him, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the fun, silent part of the meeting while we wait.
I think I could summarize it partially at least. And
if you want, yeah, if you want to take a crack at it, go ahead.
So sure. We have a lot of solar excess capacity, excess generation, especially that's coming online in the future. And the thought is, what do we do with this excess solar? Do we, have a buy-up plan or enhanced subscription or anything like that for the community? And that just basically boils it down. I know there's some acronyms that I'm missing, the PPA and all of the other things that Ed would have better accurate descriptions of, but to that extent, basically what it is. And I do have some community feedback too. So I don't know if Ed's back on yet.
I am
Ed's
back
here.
on.
There he goes.
Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. I switched to a telephone on something that's apparently more reliable than my home Wi-Fi right now. So sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Portier was just giving us a catch up from back in June. He's doing a good job. Do you want Mr. Liberty to take it over, or you want to continue?
Please do.
Okay. So we were talking a little bit about, as I joined, the concept of the solar subscription rate, I think,
Correct.
and what our previous discussions had been. Difficulties with their electric interconnection, I believe, with the Duke transmission system. And that's going to delay them, they believe, to the June timeframe of 2024. So we'll be delayed a few months before power begins flowing on that phase of the project. The FMPA Solar Committee, which I sit on, and the FMPA board so far have elected to wait and not move to terminate that agreement in any way, but allow the developer to continue to work with Duke to get that interconnection. The delay is not caused by the developer in any way. That's our understanding. It's caused by Duke in accepting interconnections into their transmission system. This, by the way, is a symptom of a problem that's occurring, or an example of a problem that's occurring nationwide, as literally thousands and thousands of renewable energy projects attempt to interconnect to the grid, and regardless of what state it is, what utility it is, and an extensive amount of modeling has to be done, and in some cases, system improvements to the grid to accommodate the large influx of solar or wind from locations where they previously did not have things connected before. So that's what this developer is going through. So they're waiting for that interconnection to come to fruition. But in the meanwhile, my understanding is that construction is proceeding. We did, in FMPA Solar 2, commit to 26.55 megawatts of solar capacity, which would be pointed straight at Lake Worth Beach. We would get the output of 26.55 megawatts of solar panels. We subsequently also committed to take a share of FMPA Solar 3, which is 33.35 megawatts. So together, Solar 2 and Solar 3 should get us to about 59 plus megawatts of solar capacity dedicated to Lake Worth Beach. Our commitment under FMPA Solar 1 was terminated by mutual decision of the FMPA board and the developer when it became apparent that the developer was not going to be able to make any of the deadlines nor honor their commitment to price. So the parties negotiated a mutually acceptable termination payment from the developer to the FMPA participants, and we received that payment earlier this year, and it was credited to our PCA. So that's where we are on solar. So we're on track for close to 60 megawatts between FMPA Solar 2 and Solar 3, which should be online between 2024 and a big chunk in 2025. So according to the current schedule, we believe we'll have all solar flowing to us in the 2026 calendar year. So fully in 2026. So it comes on in different phases, but we should have a lot of solar coming at us by January 1 of 26. So 2026 will be the first full year of solar for us.
That's cool. I was just going to ask, if you don't mind, 60 megawatts, like on a winter's day, that's all the entire city uses, right?
Very good point. So, and it's worth discussing. Some people may have already heard this, but I'll repeat it anyway because it's a very good question. We purposely overbought solar. So if you can all imagine,
yeah, of course,
yeah, if you can all imagine, you build a spreadsheet which has 365 rows to it and 24 columns. It's 24 hours per day, 365 days a year. And you now have 8,760 hours or 8,760 cells in this spreadsheet. We then populated each cell in the spreadsheet with our expected average demand, meaning if you look back a few years and you escalate for growth, what kind of load we expect to have to serve as a customer from our customer base. And then you superimpose on that what we would call fixed contracts or take or pay contracts, or if you want to call them firm contracts for energy that we've bought. So what would go into that category? Well, certainly nuclear goes in that category because nuclear has such a low marginal cost. If it's available, you run it. So it runs flat out. So that's 22 megawatts. And we now have solar midday on a peak summer day rating, right? When the sun is the highest, which in essence would be, is the June 24th timeframe. Typically, when sun is at its highest point, you have the longest days, where we've got call it a 60 megawatt entitlement. Now, each hour of the day, it's going to produce less than that, right? That's its maximum rating. So if you take a look at the hourly loads that we expect, or hourly supply of solar, the hourly supply of nuclear, and you net that out against our expected hourly load to serve, what you can see is about 6 months during the year, there will be hours during the day when we are oversubscribed, meaning we bought more energy than we have a customer for. And in our model, we use color codes of yellow and white cells. So a yellow cell in our spreadsheet would indicate an hour during which we need to buy more energy. And we buy more energy under what we call our supplemental contract. So the role of a supplemental energy provider, which is a bid contract, that's bid every 7 years or so, is to make sure that those cells remain in balance year round. So they fill in the blanks between what we have already bought on our own and what we need. So as you would expect, let's talk an overnight hour. January, pick a number, January 15th at 2 o'clock in the morning, just to pick a crazy number. Our load on the system might be, let's call it 45 megawatts. 22 of that's going to come from nuclear. The balance is going to have to come under the supplemental contract because at 2 o'clock in the morning, there is no solar. Absent storage, there is no solar. So in that particular hour, we'd be buying energy. That's probably still the same case. Mid-afternoon, well, actually, it would flip mid-afternoon. Now we've got 60 megawatts of solar, even if it's derated slightly because it's winter and the sun isn't shining as much. We get a little bit less, but we still have our 22 megawatts of solar. But you add up this, or 22 megawatts of nuclear, add the nuclear and the solar, now you probably have more power than you need because the load might only be, let's say, 55 megawatts or 60 megawatts. So what are we going to do with that extra power during that hour? Well, we're going to sell it in the wholesale markets to recoup some of our cost for having purchased it. Now, you might ask the question, well, why did we buy so much? Well, let's fast forward 6 months into June. Now our loads during the day are in 90 to 100 megawatt range. During those hours, we need all of that solar that we bought. We have no excess. So when we evaluated this spreadsheet, this model over the course of the year, we could see that we have white space and yellow space, and the yellow space is largely in the overnight hours, as you would expect. The white space is right down the middle of a spreadsheet in the daytime hours, but it goes away 5 or 6 months of the year and then reemerges the other 6 months. So that means during 4, 5, or 6 months of the year, we can expect that we're going to be overbought on solar energy. But we feel confident that we can sell it in the market as a wholesale product to other utilities but still make it worth our while to have that price of solar during the summer months. Does that make sense to folks?
Yep. I think it surely does. And then I think the topic of conversation of this is what comes next to that, which is the credits that come with generating clean energy. And I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Correct. And we're going to go through a slide presentation, which was not of my making, but I can explain good portions of it, although not 100% of it. But what that gets into is is understanding solar markets and renewable energy credits, but I know we also want to discuss or rediscuss the solar subscription rate, which we had gotten feedback from all of you on. The issue has not come up again, but I just wanted to make sure that the seed is still planted in your minds, as this may come up as a policy question for our commissioners, and you may want to weigh in as a group. The solar subscription rate was, as we described it earlier, was conceptually a rate where customers could choose basically the composition of their PCA. And they could elect a solar intensive PCA or a less solar intensive PCA. And I explained that as a big bowl full of marbles, and we've bought all of the marbles. Some are solar and some are not solar, but we bought all marbles to satisfy the needs of all of our customers. And the analogy I gave further was, would you all want to be allowing certain customers to say, I want to take a whole bunch of those marbles, but leave the rest for you, right? For the rest of you. And the consensus that seemed to be forming in the group was that you didn't like that option. You preferred the option where it's one for all and all for one. We all share in the same market basket of marbles, if you will. That was the simple analogy I gave. And I think what we said was, I'm not proposing to go either way. We're somewhat indifferent. It's actually easier for staff if we don't have to split them out. But there was some thinking earlier in the solar discussions over the last few years that might be something that customers would like. And I had an interest in having that thought, run through the mill with the advisory board to say, what do you all think as an advisory board? Is that something we should prepare to offer? Or should it just remain, hey, you buy the bundled product, and customers should not be allowed to cherry pick which particular portion of the basket they want for themselves, which therefore then leaves less of that for everybody else.
Cool. I'll repeat my opinion on that, which is, again, as long as it's net energy coming into a residence or into a private establishment, that net energy coming in should be from a shared basket of marbles, meaning we don't need to give to each customer their own decisions as far as how the PCA is decided. That basket of marbles should be communal. And as far as the net energy they're buying from the city or from Lake Worth Utilities, that should be from a shared communal resource. And that's my opinion on that. I'll let the rest of the board speak.
I feel the same way, because letting a customer choose or pick some more renewable marbles, it doesn't increase renewable overall. You're just, someone else is going to be having dirty energy. It didn't have an overall change in the big picture. So that's why I would rather have it be, drawn as a community.
And that's a very good distinction that you make there, David, in bringing that up. It is clear that the amount of solar energy that we'll have in the system doesn't change if 5 customers grab 50% of it or something, whatever the number is. Our carbon footprint remains the same. It just means that 5 customers grabbed all the green stuff for themselves and didn't, and that's ridiculous. Obviously ridiculous. 5 customers couldn't grab it all, but let's say it's 655 customers or something like that, right? Everybody shares in the same basket and would share the price, the common price, and that's it. So I think that's a good analogy. Are there other members that have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I actually went out to talk to a couple people about this as well, and they were in agreement with the rest of the board here about the equity component. I think it's like, it's not fair if some people get to pick this over that, especially if they don't know about it. But two, it's like it's the basket of marble. Everyone gets the same, like all for one model that you just mentioned. My concern primarily was more about the complications with billing. Especially if someone's going to be net metered and taking part of this participation, it just becomes this complicated mess that's easy to mess up if the billing software isn't coded correctly. I just had an issue with my billing the past 2 months as a net metered customer because some of it's still being done by hand. So maybe in 5 years we'll have new fancy billing software that can run on AI and figure everything out, but that was just one component of it that I didn't think was a good idea.
I'll agree with that. The cost to implement such a billing strategy, I don't know. I need to look at a spreadsheet analysis, but it could outweigh whatever sort of benefits it could have.
Very good points on the billing system. For those of you that are not aware, we operate on a legacy, what we call ERP system, which is a product that we refer to internally as Naviline, which is now with a company called Central Square. And it's basically our backbone ERP system. And think of it as the equivalent of PeopleSoft or Oracle or SAP. We're on a system that's made for small municipalities. It is not user-friendly. It is not contemporary. It is antiquated. Within the utility, we've attempted to move forward with a new billing system, a new product, what we call MillSoft, which is made for these types of applications. We were basically set back in our efforts while the city's IT department investigates whether Naviline can do the things that we were seeking to do with MillSoft. So the decision on the part of the city manager and the IT director was to basically stand down for now on what we call MillSoft Phase 2, which would have been a new billing system, but it also brought a whole bunch of other things to bear, which customer information system, an improved what we call an IVR, which is a interactive recognition system for getting data out to customers, proactively notifying you about outages before you call us, giving you updates. That's all been put on hold while we investigate, or IT investigates, whether Naviline can do it. I'm very confident Naviline cannot do these things, but we put the project on hold and took it out of the budget until we're allowed to continue. But there is some question as to whether Naviline will in fact allow subscription program for solar, whether that's even possible. They did not have a net metering program until we asked for one and paid for them to develop it. And there's still some question as to whether it truly works or not. But we'll find out, because in about 6 weeks or so, we'll be asking that model to do what we were told it would do and see if it does the net metering bills correct. But you're right. The point is that the billing system would have to be modified with some unknown level of effort and cost and unsure success to accomplish it. Which, my experience, brings there's a loss of credibility when the billing systems don't work properly.
Yeah, I was going to mention,
Agreed.
I did get some feedback from the community as well. Admittedly, we don't really have a solid plan for energy subscription. So it's rather nebulous, to be frank, that it could happen. There was some interest in being insulated from natural gas prices, and I think that's one of the things we discussed last time. But all of that, has to be worked out in the details, and we don't really have a solid plan for what it looks like. So,
yeah,
as of right now, I do think that, we just kind of pull from that same bucket, but I'm a big proponent of giving people options. People with net metering have options. And to say that if you're not in a single family residence and have the finances to put that on your home, finances and space to put that on your home, you're locked out of those options. I think that is also unfair. So I just want to put that out there.
Well, the billing system will be revisited. So the commitment was for IT to take a look to see compare the two options, and if the Millsoft product, turns out to be the better product, then that would be revisited. I know that there's at least one commissioner that was disappointed to hear that it was put on hold. I'm not going to put any pressure on that commissioner, but that's something a staff very much wanted to move forward with, but it's part of that Millsoft suite. It's also quite possible that the existing billing system would accommodate this. So I don't want to make it seem like we're hiding behind the Millsoft decision, because there's reason to believe that the existing billing system could accommodate a separate PCA for certain customers, but it's going to require some customizing of the code to allow it to do that.
Well, let's just assume
Yeah,
that.
and
Oh, sorry.
just-
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Portilla. You were talking about net metering in your statement. This is with respect to, I think the conversation we're having about the subscription is with the net energy coming in through your power lines, as far as how that
I
is
understand.
generated. Okay.
Correct.
And
So
so you would rather the choice of choosing your own generation.
I would rather give the community the option to buy up solar and be insulated from natural gas. That's correct.
Okay.
As individual customers.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of the have the different appointment. Correct. Yes. So as a customer, if I have the option to possibly, not have to deal with, stabilize my energy cost,
Of course,
albeit
yeah,
probably
yeah.
higher, slightly higher normally, but if we see another natural gas spike, I mean, the agreement is that I'm more insulated from those than the customer that doesn't choose that buy-up plan.
There is another
Okay.
way for you to do that. You could on your own go out and buy natural gas futures contracts, right, at a lower price, at today's price. So if you believe that the prices are going to go up and you want to insulate yourself, you buy a contract at a price that suits you, and then you liquidate it if the prices go up, right? So, or liquidate it at a break even. So you could do your own hedging. Obviously, the average customer is not going to do that. Even the non-average, but technically is you could hedge your own energy cost by participating in buying and selling of futures contracts. You do the same thing.
Of course, yeah. And I think the far more likely case is where Mr. Portilla buys more solar panels and puts them on his house. And I just want to make the point that him doing that does not affect this decision. The more solar panels he puts on his house that he contributes back to the grid or does anything else, that does not affect the price that he pays for the net energy coming in from the grid, given this conversation. And I just want to highlight and make sure that's understood.
But I want to highlight that not every person is a homeowner, and not every person lives in a single family residence, and not every single person in the community has the ability to afford solar panels for their roof.
Of course, noted.
So that's just my difference. If I lived in an apartment or a townhouse and I couldn't do that, my options are to hedge natural gas or nothing with the way the advisory board sees it. So
yes. So fortunately, in Lake Worth Beach, the way that we've restructured this portfolio in the last 6 years, and started with the 2018 resource plan, was to, over time, diminish our reliance on fossil fuels. So whether you are a proponent of just outright reduction of carbon footprint, or if you're a proponent of reducing the volatility of pricing in your energy bill, whichever side you're on for that argument, the end result is natural gas is going to be a smaller portion of our portfolio in 2026 than it was in 2022 or 2018. It's going down, and we're doing that by, number one, remaining in the FMPA St. Lucie project, which is of course nuclear. Will be in through at least 2043, and assuming the unit has life extension, another 20 years behind that. So we've also and significantly increased our buy of solar in 2018, 2019. We had none, and we're headed towards a huge chunk. I think I want to say upwards of 40% or more will be, or roughly in that neighborhood, will be solar in terms of total megawatt hours for the year. We have the nuclear component, so the natural gas piece is going to drop. I may be wrong on the 40%. To go back and look at the numbers again, we're putting those together right now. We do them manually, but we are going to significantly decrease our reliance on natural gas. But even more importantly, by the end of 2025, we also retire the FMPA Stanton unit from the portfolio, and that is nominally considered to be a coal unit. It burns primarily coal, but it does burn substantial amounts of natural gas at co-fires. So that will be gone from the portfolio and replaced by solar. So our reliance on fossil fuels over the next 2 years is going to drop dramatically in our portfolio. For those of you that are not aware, for example, the typical, customer for, Big Blue next door enjoys about 75% natural gas-based pricing, about 25% nuclear. We run somewhere around 36 to 39% nuclear, and the balance is fossil fuels, and the fossil fuel component is going to decrease dramatically. So that's one of the reasons why our PCA, we weathered the storm of those high natural gas prices better than our neighbors did. And as a matter of fact, if you look at our bills today, for the 1,000 kilowatt hour customer, we're probably in the range of $25 to $30+ a month cheaper than Big Blue across the street. So now we're not getting a lot of recognition for that. People like to scream and yell, of course, when rates are high. I understand that, but we've actually done a remarkable job of managing our expenses and restructuring and getting rates down. So
Absolutely, completely agree.
Yeah, we're in good stead there. So we're even the person who can't choose anything else but the standard portfolio is still going to have a very low carbon portfolio compared to their friends and neighbors who live in surrounding towns. Even though, as we mentioned earlier, we did some overbuying, so we're well positioned for growth beyond 2026 to continue to grow. Now, all of that dialogue shifts once energy storage comes into the picture in a meaningful way. So those megawatt hours that we've overbought, imagine a future where we don't sell them into the wholesale market. We instead put them into storage and cycle daily. So we store excess megawatts during the day in a battery energy storage device, and then release it back into our system at night and offset any fossil fuel purchases that we would have exercised overnight. And you really see a significant improvement in carbon footprint. Let's segue into two other discussions. One is renewable energy credits, because in theory, we could take the renewable energy credits from those excess kilowatt hours or megawatt hours that we have during the day. We could sell the power as just plain vanilla power, keep the renewable energy credits, and apply them to our portfolio and claim carbon reduction through credits, which would be, I believe, legitimate. That's one thing we can talk about. We should also give mention to the fact that we were selected for the Department of Energy, what we call a GRIP grant, which is related to for grid improvements. We were awarded roughly $23.4 million. And for those of you that haven't heard that yet, we were awarded $23.4 million grant, which is what we call a matching grant. We'll match it with our own funds. Amongst the projects that we were awarded for is a storage project. So we've got some work to do to size that project properly and decide exactly where it's going to be, and do the engineering and design around the system improvements to accommodate it. But we have been granted money to move ahead with a storage project, which I don't know, is anybody on the phone that's not aware of that grant award?
I was not aware of that. It sounds like we have almost $50 million going towards a storage project. That's fantastic.
Well, Not exactly, but let's spend a few minutes on that because the city has done a press release. We applied in what we call 2 topic areas. We were awarded under topic area 2. We are going to resubmit our proposal for topic area 1. But topic area 2 covered about 5 different projects in which the DOE would match a total of $23.4 million. And those projects are, I mentioned, storage is one, and storage would be accompanied with increasing the capacity of the distribution system. So distribution system improvements around our landfill, should the city at some point in the future decide to go ahead with a project to build solar on the landfill, but also to support storage. So the storage project is something that we can go ahead with, and obviously enhancing the distribution system. So the ability to move power on and off that landfill is something that we'll address through the grant. The other aspects of the projects, one involved fiber optic communications to our substations. So as we rebuild our substations, we're moving from the old analog relays to modern digital relay protection devices and communication devices with our substations as we rebuild those. So we've got a chunk of money in matching funds from the federal government, from DOE, to do that. We also have money in there for installing what we call reclosers or sectionalizers. These are remotely operated devices. Think of them as a switch. Over 60 of these that we seek to install on our distribution system, which would allow us to quickly isolate and route power around faults and around substations that might have a problem. So we've got dollars for that. We also asked for funding for a new AMI system. Our Tantalus automated metering infrastructure has failed, in our view, to perform since day one, and continues to underperform to the point where I'm skeptical that it'll ever reach its design life, and we will likely be in litigation with Siemens over this matter.
Just for clarification, that's the thing where the meter is like wireless or communicates over the power lines itself and lets you read consumption remotely, correct?
Right. It communicates over a radio frequency, and the meters are metering correctly, so that the meter read is not the problem. It's the communication of the meter read that's the problem, and they failed to communicate among other things. So at any given day right now, we have 1,200 to 1,300 or 1,400 meters per month or per day that we have to read manually. So and that's a problem. The data is at the meter; it's just stuck at the meter, and it's not communicating. So we've got in this grant award dollars to buy a new AMI system, but at the same time, we got dollars to add what's called a meter data management system, or MDM, which is basically servers that will store information from the meters for longer periods of time and higher quantities than we currently can. So, for example, today we store about 12 to 14 months of data on meter reads. Well, if you're trying to do long-term energy analysis and advise customers on improvements to their properties for energy conservation, working with only 12 to 14 months of data is not very useful. You could really like to have a few years worth. So there's dollars in there for what we call an MDM, meter data management. So suffice it to say, we've got this really record-breaking grant that we've achieved for our electric utility of $23.4 million. We have to match that with our own $23.4 million. It's not, we don't get all of it unless we match all of it. So, and the money has to be spent over about a 5-year period, likely starting in the January-February timeframe or shortly thereafter. And our very specific performance metrics and implementation benefits that the DOE would like to see documented, committed to, things like job creations and outage reductions, societal benefits, things like that. So, which we don't have any problem with. We're more than willing to do those things. But it'll also help to do things that internally, for example, it'll help the cost of the people who are implementing these projects, which, by the way, is many of our own staff. It'll help offset the cost to purchase tools and equipment for them to do their job, which could be is interpreted to also be the trucks that they drive. More poles, more hardware, more equipment, more training, those types of things that we're paying for out of pocket in our operating budgets will now be matched, if you will, by this DOE grant. So it's a fantastic opportunity for our city. It's tremendous.
Is Director Liberty, is this part of the Inflation Reduction Act? Is this the original sourcing funding from the Inflation Reduction Act?
You know, I'm a little fuzzy on that. I think it was I understand it's the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. So I'm not sure technically that was part of the IRA or not. I think it's separate.
Got it.
Yep. So one way to look at it is we've had a phenomenal win, and there's people around the country, utilities around the country saying, who are these Lake Worth people that got $23.4 million? It's a rather sizable award. And to put that in comparison, Big Blue across the street got 30 million. Well, they're like 6 million customers. We're 23,600, right? We rocked the boat, and we got quite an award. And we're going to, we take it very seriously. Obviously, that's taxpayer money that's coming to the city of Lake Worth Beach and our customers for our utility. And we need to do the right thing with it. And we will.
Excellent. Great news.
So that's the way I got onto that riff was the storage aspect. I very much want to be one of the first municipals, certainly in the state, to move ahead with the storage project and demonstrate that technology. So,
yeah, so I was gonna suggest, because most of the board doesn't seem to be on board with the solar energy subscription. Would a happy medium solution be to suggest someone put forward a waiting list to see if there's even any public interest in something like that from the actual general population of customers, and by the time that there's actually means to support something like this in the future, that we could revisit the discussion about how to actually implement it with rates and everything, because I'm afraid that the adoption rate would be so poor that it might not even be worth implementing as far as staff time and everything. Even though it sounds good in theory, I'm getting the feeling that the general consensus of the board is to not go forward with it.
My advice. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to have a comment on that, which is with the concept of a waiting list, and with even advertising such a choice in general, we need the notion of a default option, which is, what do you choose if you don't respond? Because that's going to be the bulk majority of people who are presented with this choice. So we have to pick something that would be one case or the other, or some blend of both. And in order to do that, we'd have to make some sort of assessment about what's more equitable or not. And if you take that as far as it goes, you end up with, let's not do it at all, is my main point. But also, back to your original point, I would want to make sure that we broadcast that out. Just posting it on the city website's not enough. Just posting it on a Facebook group's not enough. Perhaps flyers that would go out, a piece of mail, that would be something better. But again, doing it as much as it needs to be to make sure that people understand the decision that they're making, that seems like a very nebulous task.
Yeah, I think it certainly would have to be a decision by the city commission to do such a thing, but effectively what it would be doing would be to be setting policy by referendum, right? But I think the suggestion is an interesting one. I'm more inclined to let the board know, let the city commission know, to the extent that they're interested in pursuing it, what the position of the advisory board is, and then see this is not something that they're clamoring for an answer on right now. It's something that we saw this coming and said we should at least start this discussion at the advisory board to advise the policymakers and see what they want to do with it going forward. Something like this, to put it out into the public, requires a lot of education for people to understand the benefits and the consequences of doing something like that, right?
Right.
So
I would say if we're going to go forward with any kind of education component to the public, we should go forward with the SELF program that we recently got staffed.
Yeah. Well, technically, it's been staffed by the by SELF but with a $100,000 a year contribution from the city. So yeah, and I'm not sure how many deals they're actually doing, but still very early on in the process. But I know that their employee is on board. He is working out of our offices. I see him on a fairly regular basis. I see his posts on LinkedIn, and I know he's out and about in the community. He's been in front of customers already, but I don't have any success stories yet. But I'm sure as soon as they do, they'll be bringing those to us.
Yeah, and that's the kind of outreach that he already reached out to the neighborhood groups and asked to be present at various meetings throughout the calendar year. So that's the kind of commitment it would take, like just a constant putting it in front of people's faces and just getting it out there in order for it to be somewhat successful. My idea for the waiting list was just just spitballing to see if there's any interest in that. But I agree, it is kind of like policy by referendum at that point.
Yeah. Now, if the policymakers want to do that, that's fine. But I would suggest that this group not jump out ahead with that. So let's segue then into the concept of renewable energy credits, which people may or may not be aware of, and we do have a boatload of slides, and I don't want to go through all of them in the great detail, but what I wanted to do was introduce the subject of renewable energy credits to the advisory board, to begin to educate you on this, because this is something that is coming down the road. Probably within 6 months to a year. And the fact is that we already have renewable energy credits, but we have not monetized them. And this is something that our policymakers will likely be taking up at some point in the future. It's not on their radar right now. Maybe for one of them it is, because he's a thought leader in these types of things, maybe giving us some thought. But as a group, it's not something that's on their radar. But what I wanted to do was to get it on your radar, to begin thinking about it and forming some thoughts so you can advise your board members, your commissioners, on your opinions, and start thinking this through. So let's just start and give a broad overview. So what is a renewable energy credit? So a renewable energy credit is an attribute. It's an aspect of a megawatt hour of energy. That means if you have a megawatt hour or a kilowatt hour of energy that's been produced from a renewable source, it could be wind or solar or hydro or tidal. In this case, in our case, it's going to be solar. It has this attribute, and the attribute has a value to it that's separate and aside from the value of the megawatt hour itself. So, if you will, the provenance of that megawatt hour means something. In some states, it means a lot. In other states, it means very little. So you can sell these megawatt hours from a solar resource as a bundled product, which is the way that we bought them, by the way. So when we buy power from these FMPA projects, we get the power and we get the attribute. So it comes with what we refer to as an SREC, solar renewable energy credit, or some people just call it a REC, renewable energy credit. But it comes bundled. We can then unbundle it if we want to and sell the REC, but keep the energy. Or we could sell it as a bundled product if we have excess. As we discussed, we expect to have some excess. Well, who wants to buy these things? Who would buy a REC, and what would they buy them for? So there are companies, for example, that may have a renewable energy goal or an image that they want to project to the market, a claim they want to make to their customers that they are, buying green energy. And the way that they do that if they don't buy direct green energy, is they buy the number of credits that match up with their energy, and say, if I match these credits with the plain vanilla power that I bought, magic happens and it's now considered renewable. I've now bought these carbon offsets or renewable credits. So that's why some people buy them. Just having them doesn't mean that you have to sell them. You can certainly just keep them and retire them, which in fact is what we do. We produce probably around 2,500 of these credits per year from the city's landfill project, and we retire them. We don't resell them. There's been no policy decision to do that, and that goes back, to the early days. We could certainly do that, but we don't. The interesting things about this is that once you sell them, stands to reason, you no longer have them. So let's say you bought 1,000 megawatt hours of solar energy bundled with the credits, and then you decided to sell the credits. Well, you no longer have 1,000 megawatt hours of solar energy. You have 1,000 megawatt hours of energy. The solar label, the made in label, went to whoever you sold it to. So, for example, if we were to sell our credits, we could not say that we really reduced our carbon footprint because we would have sold them. Now, in some states, these credits are worth a lot. And what changes, or what would say, well, why are they worth a lot in some states and not worth a lot in other states? And that's where we get into what are called renewable portfolio standards or clean electricity standards. So what is a renewable portfolio standard? A renewable portfolio standard is where some state governing agency with powers of enforcement has mandated that utilities or sellers of electricity in the state, some states are unbundled, so not necessarily a utility, are selling energy. And the governing bodies, the legislatures, have mandated that certain percentages of what they sell would have to be renewable, would have to come from a renewable source. And they have different classes of renewable. So there's a requirement that people who sell energy have certain ingredient mix, if you will, in their power. Well, how does that really drive the value of a renewable energy credit? What they do is they impose penalties for non-compliance. And when you set a penalty for not doing something, in essence, then drives the price for doing it correctly. So if you set the penalty for not having renewable energy at $300 per unit, you've basically just set the value of the renewable energy credit. So if I'm selling wholesale power or retail power and I need these credits and I don't have them, I would be willing to spend anything up to $300 to buy them from somebody, because the penalty I'm going to pay is $300. I wouldn't pay somebody $310 if my penalty is going to be $300, right? But I might pay them $290 and save myself $10 from the penalty. Does everybody follow that logic?
Yep.
Yeah, I follow.
Yeah,
So-
I think we're with it. But maybe I can just fast forward here a minute. We have a bunch of these RECs and we need to sell them. So let's do it. Like,
Well,
tell me how
we
I'm
don't-
wrong, please.
No, that's where the policy matter will come in. So in the future, we're going to have a lot of these, but Florida is not a compliance state. We don't have a renewable portfolio standard. So in the state of Florida, and renewable energy credits, by the way, are generally not transferable across state lines. They're typically isolated within a particular state. Because they're driven ultimately by state regulations. So we could not say, hey, let's take our credits that we made in Florida and sell them in New Jersey for $200 a credit. No, you can't do that. The people in New Jersey, they wouldn't get the value out of them. They can't comply with those. So who's going to buy them in Florida? It turns out to be what we call the voluntary market. So there are companies that want to do right, they want to buy these credits, which in some cases allow the people who built the projects to get another revenue stream, which makes it more likely that more people will build projects, right? So the more attractive a project is to build financially, the more likely they are to get built. So there are people who will buy these things, but it's a voluntary market. And you can go through these slides and look at a lot of detail, but in Florida, they might be worth anywhere between 50 cents a credit to $4 a credit. And because it's not a state with a compliance market or a renewable portfolio standard, there's not a lot of transparency and visibility as to what these credits are actually selling at. So there's no common marketplace where you can stand there like on a stock exchange and just listen to the traders shouting at each other and say, gee, that's what IBM sold for today, or Xerox, or any of the others, or Tesla. There's not a lot of transparency to what they're trading at, but you can in fact sell them. The policy discussion, though, is, do you want to sell them? Because once you sell them, you've transferred that carbon credit to somebody else. You no longer have them. So let's say, for example, that our portfolio could be as much as, let's just pick a number for the moment, of 40% renewable. If we sell those credits, we're no longer 40% renewable because we sold our credits. Now, the renewable project is up and running in the state. The value to the environment has been created, but it's no longer ours to claim. If that logic makes sense to you.
It does. So Florida's an opaque market where RECs are hard to sell. What do we do with them?
Correct. Now, there are brokers in the market that are beginning to transact in this market. For the benefit of disclosure, at one stage in my career, I did create a brokerage entity for renewable energy credits, but that was in a state with a renewable portfolio standard and a compliance market. And we were busy. It was an online, it was a face-to-face broker, buyer to seller type thing. We were the brokers in the middle, but we also ran online auctions for them. We helped create that market, but Florida is, like you said, opaque. So you have to go out and find the buyers. So there are brokers in the state, and there are other people that we know of who are actively selling. I don't know any buyers at the moment, but I know sellers. And the sellers that I know of so far are really large utilities, one of which is maybe FMPA. So FMPA is, and that's why you have these slides that were put together by FMPA. These were presented to us by staff at FMPA, because the FMPA board, which I sit on, is trying to decide what it wants to do with its own portfolio of RECs. These are the ones that would be, for example, what we call the All Requirements Project, which does not include us. So FMPA does not have the authority to sell our RECs. Those are our RECs. We could, as a city, the policymakers may decide to sell them, but I don't have the authority to tell them go sell them. So they're only looking at selling their own right now. And as board members, we're evaluating whether that's in the best interest of the membership to do that. So that's why these slides are here. So it's a policy matter. Do you want to transfer these rights, or do you want to keep them? The fact is that we've been producing RECs at the rate of about 2,500 per year from the city's landfill project. It produces between 2,500 to 2,900 or 3,000 RECs per year. They are retained, and effectively, if you don't sell them within a certain amount of time, they basically expire. It means that you got the credit for them, and their shelf life is expired. You can't resell them to anybody else. I believe that's.
So, just a quick question: what is having a bunch of them do? Is there any benefit to just like holding a bunch of RECs?
Well, what you're doing is you're able to say that you've reduced your carbon footprint by that amount, because if you sell them, you can't make that statement anymore.
Oh, okay. All right, I understand the situation.
Yeah.
So if somebody buys those RECs from us, if they didn't drop their carbon output and they buy the RECs, they can say they dropped the carbon output even though they actually didn't.
Correct. Correct. They bought the rights to say they did, and they bought those rights from somebody else who actually did it, but transferred the rights to them.
Ed, how many carbon RECs do we currently have?
Well, we produce like between 2,500 to 3,000 per year, and you can't store them. I believe they might be able to keep them for like a year after the creation. I'm fuzzy on those details in this voluntary market, but you can't stockpile them for 5 years and then sell them as a lump. You can't do that. They have a shelf life.
So even even at 3,000 times 4, which you said is what they're selling for, that's just $12,000. We're not talking much money here.
Right, and 4 is anecdotal, reported as the upper band of what people have reported trades being done at.
Right.
But, yep.
I mean, 12 doesn't even get you a car. So I mean,
exactly.
What are we?
Well,
yeah,
it's into take issue with that. The materials that were included, if you want to go to like, page 51 of 56, however this PDF is defined, it says Lake Worth on the low end could make 30 grand, and then it says on the high end we could make close to $600,000.
Yeah, but let's put that in context. That is looking at, if I understand correctly, our
that's
FMPA
phase 2 and 3.
Right, solar 2 and 3. And that's the bandwidth. It could be as little as, you're right, as little as $29,000 or as much as $587,000. But when we look at our carbon reduction goal resolution that was passed by the city commission not that long ago, we want to get to, I believe, a 45 or a significant reduction by 2045 or 2035, rather 2035. I think it's 60%. I forget the exact numbers. But so you couldn't get there if you sold the credits.
Oh, I get it. Okay, that's absurdly silly, but I get it. Okay.
But hold on, wait a second. If we sell the credits, or not sell the credits, in 2023, every year it goes different, correct?
The dollar value?
Well, no. Meaning, are we 40%, renewable energy, or, utilizing that? So,
Yes.
So the slate's clean every year.
Basically, they last about 12 months after the end of the year in which they were created. That's my rough understanding. I have to go back and check the specifics on that. It's like fruit on the shelf. It'll last for a little bit after you bought it at the supermarket, but it's not going to last 2 years.
Gotcha.
So, and the numbers that you see in these FMPA slides are attributed to the FMPA projects that we're participating in that start flowing in 2024 and 2025. So these do not yet exist. And you can see that they valued them in one column at 20 cents a rec, and in another column as much as $4 a rec, just to give a broad swim lane, if you will, of what these things could be worth.
Right. And as we heard in the very first thing you said in this meeting, all of that could just implode, and it could cost more to develop, and we bail, and that doesn't even exist. So these projections might not even come to fruition.
Yeah, exactly. And these recs are clearly ours. They are not the property of the developer or the owner of the project, which is a company called Origis. They are the property of FMPA members who signed on for specific shares of the project. And that's why you can see different categories here. So Beaches is a utility up in the Jacksonville area. Fort Pierce Utility Authority, Havana, Homestead, Jacksonville Electric, Keys Energy, Kissimmee, and then the other, city of Leesburg, Lake Worth, Mount Dora, New Smyrna, Newberry, Ocala, Winter Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
That's how that works.
Well, not to short circuit anything, but my opinion on all of this is let's keep our recs and fly the flag and say we're clean energy and not worry about whatever market might exist.
Yeah, I agree. It seems to contradict the carbon reduction goal if we were to sell anything like this.
With these grants we're getting, we don't really need the cash, for the amount of cash you would get selling them. It's not going to benefit us that much.
And unless the political landscape changes in Florida and we become a California, then yeah, it's at $12,000. It's not worth even discussing.
Correct. We would blow through $12,000 of staff time in a hurry. So, yeah, it is a policy decision. I don't disagree with the decision to keep them in retirement. I think it's the decision to keep them and retire them is in keeping with the who we are. All right, assuming that who we are is, you know, who we elect as a city, who our leaders are. They represent the ethos of our city, right? And to sell them would appear to be contradictory to who we are. So that's my thoughts as a staff member. But ultimately, this is a policymaker's decision, and my thought was to just let you all start thinking about it. And we're not asking for a vote tonight. We just wanted to educate you on the subject because it may be something. I'm out ahead. I'm anticipating that this is something that the City Commission may want to address at some point in the future. I think there's probably only one that's aware, or that follows this type of stuff. We have not been asked for you to look at this at all, but it was something I felt that I really wanted to bring to you and let you start thinking about it and get educated. So use these slides to educate yourselves, but certainly do reading, do some online searches and become familiar with the subject.
Is there any hint in, I guess, Tallahassee or anywhere that in the future, in the next 20 years, they would actually start implementing something like a penalty for not having carbon reduced energy?
I have seen nothing at the state level along these lines. Nothing.
Okay.
There is some thought that at the national level, there might be a price on carbon emissions applied. And there is some, I believe, might be a notice of public rulemaking where certain state agencies might be applying to the economic tests of projects a dollar value to carbon created or carbon reduced in making decisions on what to, which project A, B, or C to select. But I haven't seen anything yet that would drive within a state to put a value on it. So far, it's been, for example, utilities reacting to the perceived will of the people to see certain things happen. Political motivation to reduce carbon. Now, all of the investor-owned utilities, of course, the dollars that they invest in these new technologies are going into their rate base and they're earning on it, which is appropriate. But for example, they're all embracing solar. I know, for example, FPL is not only going solar, but they're greatly embracing battery energy storage and hydrogen. So things that reduce carbon, of course, all of that infrastructure is going into the rate base and they're earning their rate of return on it and helping them reduce their carbon footprint.
So can I ask, what is Nebraska doing? Like, they look like the best state in that entire chart. So it seems like they're doing something the best. Do you know anything about what the entire state of Nebraska is doing?
Which page you're on? Because I don't have it on my. I'm working off the phone right now.
Oh, it says page 31 of 56 on the actual PDF.
I have page 3 of 30.
Well,
it seems like it's 3 of
30.
30. But Nebraska is the most standout looking state on that entire slide, and I just wonder, what's Nebraska doing? You don't hear about them a lot.
I'm colorblind, but is there color that says CES?
I think they're the most 100% CES of any of the other states, but perhaps I'm reading that wrong.
Oh no, yeah, you're reading it wrong. So what that is that they have a clean energy standard. And as you look to the left, it says Clean Energy Standard, CES, broader clean definition and market-based credit trading allowed. So that has to do with the regulatory environment. That doesn't mean that they're 100% green or 100% renewable. They have a clean energy standard that applies to 100% of their energy resources. And if, as opposed to something that's more stringent, which is a renewable portfolio standard. So if you look in the Northeast, you see some very dark blues like New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware.
Yeah.
And Vermont have a very strict, very high renewable portfolio standard, probably with compliance penalties for not complying. So that's speaking to the regulatory environment, not necessarily what their production is.
So it's like the renewable portfolio standard means like the physical source of electricity must be renewable, which means
Correct.
that all the power generated in that state should be renewable, meaning like wind, solar, hydroelectric, what have you.
Well, it's done by percentages, recognizing that there had to be a step-up process over time. So the percentage that has to come from renewable, for example, my experience was in New Jersey, that percentage would step up every few years, get higher and higher and higher. So the energy suppliers, the energy producers would have time to adjust their portfolio and build the plants to make that type of power. And at the same time,
okay,
by inference, that means begin to retire the plants that don't.
got it. Okay, so yellowish states are kind of they're trading, but the blue states are generating in a clean way.
Exactly, and those numbers could be dramatic. Just to give you an idea of how big this could be, I'll use my example in New Jersey. 12 to 15 years ago, when I launched that platform, we were brokering credits in the range of $270 to $500 per credit. A credit is a megawatt hour.
Wow.
The power was only selling for 30. The credit was selling for multiples of 10 to 15 or 20 times what the power was selling for.
That's absurd.
And what it did is it drove developers to build those projects, because as a developer of the project, you were going to get the sale of the power under a long-term power purchase agreement to some buyer. You were going to sell credits, which drove up that price. You were going to get an investment tax credit and accelerated depreciation. So the credits were designed to allow developers to get nominally a 13 to 15% return on equity, or in that case, it might have been an IRR, internal rate of return. Because the feeling was that if you didn't create that return potential in the market, people would not build the projects to create the credits. So the state set the compliance penalty at a rate that was high enough to incent projects to get built. So it used a penalty system as the incentivizer to get projects built, if that makes sense. And it worked.
It does. Okay.
It worked. What it did was it caused the private investors to sit up and take notice and say, hey, there's a lot of money to be made in building these solar projects. Look what these compliance penalties are going for and what people would be willing to pay for the power, because they have to comply. So it drove many, many projects, some of which I developed, for the company I was working for.
Of course. Yeah, no, that's really good information. I wonder how policy like that could apply to our small little municipality.
It significantly drives up the cost of power to the consumer.
It does do that. It does.
Yes, it does. It does. Now, fortunately, Florida is, in the last 5 years, has gone heavily towards solar. I mean, just look at our portfolio. When I arrived here in August 17, we had 1.7 megawatts in our portfolio. We've since added 60 in just 6 years. It's not flowing yet, but we've contracted for 60, right? Dramatically changing our portfolio, and we're retiring 8 or 11 megawatts of coal, and retiring 35 megawatts of steam capacity at our own power plant, which was rarely running, but we're dramatically shifting our portfolio and bringing our carbon footprint down by 2026. So that's how these credits are used in these compliance markets. The hope I think in the voluntary markets is that altruism, people who are willing to buy these things, will effectively flow dollars to the people who do the projects. Now, I would argue that these types of credits are not going to make a bad project look good, but they're going to make a good project look a little bit better. They're not big enough to incent somebody to go build something.
I had a question about the ask from the board here. So I noticed that we're seeing slides from the FMPA. We're not going to give any advice at all to the FMPA, correct? This is strictly for our commissioners.
Correct. Yep, correct. Advice which they haven't asked for yet, but I'm prepping you all to begin educating yourselves on it for the day when they do ask. So you're not caught flat-footed and you've begun to give it some thought. So these types of meetings, you should be just kicking it around, pros and cons, testing your knowledge, and then seeking more knowledge, and sharing in a safe space, if you will, even though these meetings are public. What are your thoughts, and what would so just...
Director, is there any recs associated with storage yet?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But you don't, for example, if you use solar energy to fill the storage, it still has that attribute when it comes out of storage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, you lose
shifted.
some of them because it's not 100% efficient device, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put 100 units of energy in, you're going to get 90 units of energy out, roughly.
Okay, I don't mean to derail too far. I know that's a whole nother conversation.
No, it's an interesting subject. It really, as I said, don't feel like you have to make decisions tonight, but you should all just toss it around your heads, because it forces your brain to think in a little bit different way. This concept of a credit. So now you got capacity, you got energy, you got a credit. And it's all comes through the plug. It's like, what's happening?
Yeah, no, I know. It's kind of all garbage, and the financialization of everything should just not exist. But it's interesting, and if it all happened in real time, it'd be a lot more easy to make sense of financially, at least. Perhaps that wouldn't have the best value, but we're not going to change that.
Yeah.
I just wonder, so Mr. Oblander, what do we need to do?
Well, I believe this is just an information session. We don't have to really do anything except digest it. I mean, I didn't get my packet on this until yesterday. So this is this is where I'm just kind of learning about what's coming down. If you get approached by any of the commissioners or mayor, you'll have some knowledge on the topic, and you can formulate a thought on it. I had a question for the carbon reduction goals. What was the final decision? What was the time frame for that? Was it 20 years out?
I'm having a mental lapse at the moment, trying to remember exactly. It's just like a mental block. It was a significant reduction by 2045. By 2045, we wanted to be at net zero. By 2035, I think we wanted to have a 50 or 60% reduction. I'm sorry if I'm stuck on the numbers right now. I got some numbers in my head, but I should have had it memorized, but I did until a while ago. But I can send you all that resolution. Suhei, just take a note to have us send that resolution to you. It was actually championed by our vice mayor. We had done our resource planning around a 50% reduction by a certain date, and or having everything done by 2050. Then it was changed to 2045. The vice mayor championed that, and I'm not saying it was wrong. It was more aggressive than we had envisioned, but and we're going to beat that. We're well on our path to do that. So, but we'll get you that specific resolution so you have it.
Right. So I was kind of tying that to the concept of if we are meeting our goals on a every 5-year basis or even annually, and we have wiggle room to potentially sell RECs if we wanted to on the voluntary market, would that be an appropriate time to do so if we're meeting our goals, or should we just go full steam ahead and work towards driving it down to net zero?
Well, that's an interesting discussion that to have, debate. My gut says, knowing the leanings of our city would say, just keep them. If you can do better, faster, then keep going. Keep going. And what I also say is that whether you're driven by a belief that in global warming, or by you're driven by the fact that you don't want to see stuff coming out of a stack, it would make sense to do more faster and not retire them and keep them. Just retire. I'm sorry, not sell them, rather keep them. Just keep them and retire them and just keep going. Now, if for the folks that argue hard about, that we're running out of time as a planet, which I'm not going to take anything away from these arguments, then you'd want to do as much as you can, as quickly as you can, even if you're doing more than what you think your fair share is.
You said that in a neutral way, but I'll take an opinion on it, which is we should take our RECs and keep them. And the way we sell energy to individual retail customers on their own should come from that general bucket. The city of Lake Worth should decide how to buy energy and how to distribute it, and not put the onus or the burden of trying to figure out what might be in the future the best way to buy power, and instead kind of solve that for them, and then keep the credits and say, yeah, we're doing good.
Right.
Yeah. Is there any chance that residential customers or even commercial customers with solar panels on their roofs would be getting RECs in the near future? Because I don't think they would actually mind selling those for a profit, or unless it was a business who wanted to claim that they were net zero as well.
Yeah, I think the way it works is that the RECs, for example, we as a city utility, we buy the power with the RECs, and then we sell the power to you through your meter, but we keep the credits. The city keeps the credits. They don't flow to the customer. I think that's the logic of how this works, if I remember correctly. So in other words, you all as customers can't say, well, I got 1,000 kilowatt hours a month, so over some period of time, I got 1, 2, or 3, or 5 RECs are mine. I can sell those 5 RECs. No, you can't. They stayed with the city. You got the power. The city kept the REC. That's my understanding of how this works. But Ryan, in your case, having a solar project, you're producing RECs. I don't know of a service that would deal with at the residential level, but in theory, you could sell those RECs. You just have to find a service that could sell them for you. I have not seen an aggregator yet of RECs at the residential level. The market may not be big enough to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I don't think it is.
And I trying to think back to when we launched our work, we were dealing with very, very large systems, not residential aggregation. But I would imagine that by now there's probably folks in that market, small private entities that sprung up aggregating residential RECs. Be hard to make money at it because there's not a lot of them, and you're as a broker, you're just getting a few points on the deal. So these are interesting concepts. Again, it was just, I think you said it correctly. This is educational. If you want to get into the details of these slides at a future meeting, I could ask the FMPA author of these slides to come and present. take you into much more gory detail than I'm able to do working from his slides. But we could certainly arrange for that if you wanted.
Okay, so is this going to be coming back as a future unfinished business item at another meeting, or are we just going to say this was the presentation? We are informed, because there's really no action item, correct?
Correct. There's no action item. The only action item would be if you want, for example, for me to have the author of the slides come and speak to you in more detail. And I think in one-on-ones with the commissioners, as we get closer to these things coming online, we may hear that the commissioners want to talk about it, but at the moment we don't have any directive from them to do that. But I'm just anticipating that these questions will come up.
Okay. Well, how's the board feel about getting another presentation from the author of the slides at a future date?
Yeah, I'd like to see more I'd like to see more about this.
Okay.
I'd love to have a conversation with anybody from the FMPA. So yes.
Okay. So I'll reach out to FMPA. I have a board meeting this week. I'll talk to staff there and see what the schedule looks like do a Zoom type thing, and to have them go through these slides with more technical detail. That'll be, much more technical detail than I've gone into tonight, but you'll be better prepared for it. Intellectually stimulating is the category I would put it into.
Yeah. And of course the focus will be Rex, but I also think the board being able to talk to a member of the FMPA would be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But just for general topics.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, you do have me as the chair of one of the solar committees and also as a board member. So, but yeah, staff there is phenomenally very bright and very well prepared.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Liberty, for all the information. I think it's safe to say we can just move on to wrap up the meeting with board comments. I would want to say welcome to our newest board member. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Ted?
Is Theodore with us?
He looks like he's unmuted, but I can't hear him. Or we can just save the introduction for another time. But anyway. Oh, I think he's phoning in.
I'm wondering if Ted went over to the YouTube site and didn't stay as a panelist.
No, he's showing as a panelist here.
Oh, okay.
I'm also seeing his phone number, and his phone number is muted. I don't know how to unmute him. Yeah, Suhei, is there a way you can unmute?
Tried both. Yeah, it's not working. I'm not sure.
I think from the phone it's *6.
*6. You can try it.
Yeah. He can probably hear us, but sorry, Ted. We'll say hi next time.
That's how these things work.
Well, I can share with you that Ted is very enthusiastic. He did meet with me a few months ago. We spent at least a couple of hours, very learned in this subject, and has been in the state for a long time. Loves the outdoors, and if I remember correctly, is scuba diving and boating, and moved here from the Miami area, and just loves being in the Lake Worth Beach area. So glad to have him on board. Very, very good kickoff meeting with me, just as I had with all of you when you first came on the board. So look forward to working with Ted and the rest of you as well.
Okay, great. He's not part of the Palm Springs.
No.
Okay.
No, we continue to ask for participation from Palm Springs, and the feedback I continue to get from the attorney and the city manager is they think it's going great, and they're very happy with the way things are going, and nobody feels the need to participate.
Okay.
So that's a good sign, right? But
so Palm Springs loves their power bills. Okay, that's an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not getting any. I mean, the biggest issue for them in the past was reliability, but they see that we've got huge levels of investment going in.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. The reliability of the Lake Worth grid I've lived here for about 7 years now, and it's increased massively, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it has actually. And I think the iguana or invasive animal wraps around the poles are doing a tremendous job. I still see the iguanas running everywhere but they can't get up our poles, fortunately.
Well, it's like, even if they do, now we have a power grid that can crisp them instead of let them conduct. So everything's great.
We've, we like there's a huge amount of work. You all, on the east side of the city, you've seen conversions. Thousands of customers have been converted from 4 kV to new hardened 26 kV infrastructure. We've got
get rid of an iguana real fast.
Yeah, we've got a brand new 7th Avenue North substation, and we are well underway with construction to receive the new tie line at what we call Canal and rebuild that 26 kV substation out there. Our main yard has been completely rebuilt with a lot of insulators switches that date back to the 1960s have been removed, and the yard has been modified significantly. It's a brand new control house, $1 million plus control house. We have entirely new outage management systems, what we call a SCADA system. We are underway with a brand new control room, our Electric System Operations Control Center, what we call ESOC, will be brand new. We hope to be moving in there within the next 4 to 6 weeks and retiring the old control center. We've had hundreds of new concrete, steel, and wood poles. I say hundreds, probably close to at least 1,000 in the last few years, just deployed. There's a tremendous amount of work that's been underway. For those of you who don't remember, we basically did a cash out refinancing and came up with $88 million, which is going into the system, plus $16 million that was here. So there's about $100 million in investment going into the system, not yet counting the matching grant that we're going to get. So just tremendous work. Rebuilt transformers, switches, breakers, dramatic stuff that we've done. But that doesn't mean that we don't get issues from time to time. We still have iguanas and raccoons that we have to chase off the system, and birds, squirrels, rats.
Right.
Yeah.
But that under 3 hours, it's been gold, and I think everybody on this call appreciates it.
Yeah. I'll share with you anecdotally, one of our staff members at City Hall, mentioned that he'd been out of power for almost 24 hours waiting for FPL to come and fix it. And I said, wow, like, what is it? He says, the transformer. I said, oh, one of the substation transformers. He says, no, it's a pole top transformer. I said, 24 hours? We fix ours within 3. Kudos to our linemen who answer that phone 7 days a week around the clock, jump in their car, come to work like a fireman, and get out there and replace a transformer, get customers back usually in under 3 hours. It's just tremendous what our team does. So we think about it every day.
Yeah, the under 3 hours, it's been incredible. Like, I've been living with it ever since it's been policy, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Ditto. I had a question about infrastructure improvements around downtown. Just saw that the Gulfstream project passed the Historic Resource Preservation Board planning. This will be coming in front of the commission soon. And as part of that project, are there any substantial upgrades to the grid around that area?
Yes, there are. So for those of you that are kind of familiar with it, there's a vacant lot in an alleyway that runs north-south. That overhead infrastructure in that alleyway and some of the overhead infrastructure that feeds that alleyway is going to be put underground into what we call a duct bank. We're also going to have 2 circuits. Right now, there's 1 circuit that serves that area. We're going to have 2 circuits that are going to come in down that alleyway to feed that area, and it's going to have a transfer switch, what we call an auto transfer switch. So if one of those circuits loses power, the transfer switch will flop over and power will be provided from the other circuit. So it's going to improve reliability in that area, not just for the hotel, but certainly for the surrounding neighborhood. So there's some overhead infrastructure over there. You're all familiar. There's the boat ramp, for example. And one of the concerns I have with the number of boats that come and go with an overhead infrastructure near the boat ramps is someday somebody's going to pull out of there and forget to put their outriggers down, or something like that, and is going to make contact, and God forbid somebody gets hurt. So we want to move some of that overhead infrastructure underground as well. So we're going to harden and move stuff underground, and then right nearby is the crossing to the beach. So we'll be reinforcing that and installing a new crossing to the beach at 26 kV as well from 4 kV. So there's a bunch of work planned for that area that'll improve reliability. The last thing we want to do is have, down the road, a situation where obviously the Gulf Stream, hopefully be a big tourism draw, is to have some kind of a conference or meetings going on there, hundreds of guests and the lights out. So we're reinforcing an infrastructure.
Okay, and that was my follow-up question, was about the beach conduit.
Yeah, we're underway with the design and the permitting. We've done the soil bores across the intercoastal, or what's correctly called the lagoon, because we didn't bore just the intersection, which is intercoastal. We checked it all out, and we will be basically installing at least 2 and likely 3 or more conduits across the intercoastal for power and fiber optic communication. We've actually just we're about to open a bid. We asked for assistance. We're going to select a consultant that's going to help us basically shop the capability for fiber to see what the cable and telephone providers are willing to pay to be in a conduit that we're going to build across the intercoastal. So we'll offset our cost. So we want to have fiber connectivity to our facilities up there instead of the current radio. And if we can offset some of that cost by having other people in that conduit, that would be good.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, just not to repeat that, but like you said, you put out a solicitation for that?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Right now the solicitation is to pick the consultant that's going to help us, because that's not a market that we know anything about. But we know there's a market there. We just need to know how to access it and get their bids for what they're willing to pay to be in that conduit. So there are literally thousands of of customers out there for cable and telephone, and providers that want to reach them, and there's limited fiber connectivity out there.
Right, and Palm Beach Island already has it running down, so tapping into that and carrying some of the traffic, that could be a gold mine. Sweet.
Right. Yep. There's also, many people don't know this, but I'll share this with you. There's something called a lambda rail, like the Greek symbol lambda. That is a high-speed fiber communications link that runs north-south along the East Coast. It goes north-south through our service territory. So the ability to bring communications closer to that lambda rail from out there is tremendous.
It really is. There's no way to overstate that.
Yeah, and maybe not so obvious too. One of the reasons we want to have 26 kV at the beach is it also is one step closer to having infrastructure to support ocean current energy. For the day someday when that becomes reality, the ability to be ready with some 26 kV infrastructure at the beach to bring that power ashore positions the city in a good place.
You're just checking off all my conversation points.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. By the way, we applied, or rather, Florida Atlantic University, their Southeast National Marine Energy Research Center, which is a DOE research center, applied for a grant for further study of ocean current energy. They were successful in their application. I believe they received about $800,000, of which $50,000 is earmarked or targeted for Lake Worth Beach for our staff, our team, to help assess the how to move that power onshore or through our system, and then how to reach other buyers of power statewide that might want to buy power there. So there's a portion of that which is going to be coming at us. It's nothing like the 23.4 million. It might be $50,000, but we're in the conversation. We're on the radar with DOE.
Very cool. All right, well, I don't have any more bullet points. Any of the board members have things that they wanted to bring up before we wrap up?
I'm fine for now.
Yeah, I think we're good. We can wrap it up.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Liberty.
Well, thank you all for spending a Tuesday evening with us.
Well, that's another thing I want to ask, though, is normally we would meet on a Wednesday, and that was actually a meeting regularly. How does everyone feel about Tuesday for the next meeting? If there was a choice between a Tuesday and a Wednesday, if we had one, right?
I'm flexible. I'm flexible on Tuesday or Wednesday.
I'll take whatever, but it sounds like you want to pick the Wednesday, so we'll go with that.
Yeah, I favored the Wednesday as well. I had to cancel something tonight, but yeah, I think even Mr. Stevens can't make Tuesdays. So if we can, try to slate something for a Wednesday, that'd be great for next time.
Okay. And Suhei's locked it into her memory there. I'm sure she's taking notes.
All right, great. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Correct.
Seconded.
I don't think we had a.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Have a good evening, all.